I'm Haley Taylor, and you're listening to the Rough Draft Diaries. Last week on the Rough Draft Diaries Revisit, we caught up with Robert Smith of the African American Legacy Project. I asked if he, like in our first episode together, could share a few stories regarding the history of the African American community here in Toledo. Instead of using his voice, he nominated Norman and Ora Bell to share their story. So today you'll meet Mr. and Mrs. Bell. But their story doesn't start in Toledo, it begins in Louisiana. Norman was born in Baton Rouge during the Great Depression. He went to primary school, high school, and college within the city, attending Southern University, graduating with a degree in business administration. But his place of employment was at another school.
Here's an interesting story about segregation and discrimination. I worked for Louisiana State University for 5 years, but I could not attend LSU, so I would ride a bus to Southern, which is about 8 miles away from Baton Rouge. And that's how I was able to earn my bachelor's degree, by working for Louisiana State University in the capacity of, I say sanitary engineer, but janitor. And I started out at 30 cents an hour, and in 56 I had completed my academic end of it and also earned a second lieutenant commission.
While at Southern University, Norman also met Ora, who was going to the same school.
I am originally, like Norman, from Louisiana. I'm a sharecropper's daughter. It was 7 of us, 7 children. We rode the bus to school. We would be riding the bus, and the little white kids would be on the bus making fun of us because they would pass us walking while they were riding. And we could not ride the same bus, but going to school in the same area. I met Norman at Southern University when I went to college. I didn't graduate from Southern, but I have graduated.
Ora actually graduated from University of Toledo, which kind of speeds up our story a bit. Ora and Norman married in Louisiana and had a few kids. Around the age of 25, Norman decided to take a trip up north to visit his cousin in Toledo, Ohio, a trip that would change everything.
I came here because I thought that I would just be visiting and then go back to Baton Rouge. There was a whisper in my ear telling me, "No, Norman, you will not return to Baton Rouge. You're going to remain right here." And the rest of it goes from that point forward. And being able to also inform my wife when I decided I wasn't going to go back, to let her know, because at that time I had three children.
So Norman contacted Ora, saying that the visit was permanent, that he wasn't returning to Louisiana, but instead he was going to find a job and eventually send for her and the kids to live in the north. I asked Ora how she accepted this news, and she said it's almost too difficult to talk about. But she understood how important the move would be for not only herself, but more specifically for her children, as she remembered back on her education in the segregated South.
But with the kids, I just couldn't have done it, that way with the kids. So we had to make a move to try and pull us together and get the kids into school, because they were not old enough at the time to go. But we wanted to be prepared for that. It was rough in one sense, but it's like, if that's all you've ever been exposed to, I guess we just kind of got used to it, and you made the adjustment. But we were able to, in spite of that, we were able to cope and to learn and to be able to move on and try and make a better life for ourselves.
And what we were trying to do, and what we did, was to stress education and how important education is to survive in the system. I'd earned a bachelor's degree in Baton Rouge before I came up, so I ended the master's program at the University of Toledo in the educational field, and earned a master's there. And then at the time, my kids were looking and listening. I'm working days and going to school nights. Mm-hmm. It was a struggle, but I accomplished that, and I learned that to do anything, you're going to have to put in the work to get it done, and then stress the same thing for our children, and they've accomplished that. That's a good thing.
So yes, just a year after Norman arrived in Toledo, Ora and the children followed. And just like Norman tried to create an example for his kids on what could be possible for the future, Norman himself retired from working in the city government for a number of years in 1987, Ora created the same picture. Upon arriving in Toledo, she became a cosmetologist to pay the bills, while also going to school part-time to become a social worker and raising 4 kids who were all in school at the same time. Education, education, education. It's what the Bells stressed over and over again, even when I asked Norman if he experienced discrimination upon arriving in the North, in Toledo. In the same way that he experienced in the South, he still stressed the same thing.
Did I experience any things along the way? Yeah, you little bumps in the road here and there, but you try and work around that. I was taught that what one should do is, first of all, apply yourself, get an education, and learn as much as you possibly can. And where you run into bumps in the road as it relates to racism or discrimination, whatever you want to call it, whereby that you're able to even move around that and move on with your life. So that's what has been some of my experience as I move on here in Toledo.
I'm Haley Taylor, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Rough Draft Diaries.